participating in this broadcast is known to cause increased amounts of FOMO. Wells only and his guests are not responsible for any losses you may accrue for having weak hands. Where the haters at? Y'all bitches still ain't showed up. And now, right, we got Hex, flawless uptime. People thought this was a joke. Now they're mad at the chart. It's lullaby music, really, right? It's hard to believe that something like this exists. I get it, but you just gotta come to terms with reality. It just exists. Nothing we can do about it. Buy a steak and chill, baby. Shout out to Marketable Thoughts. You can't get this kind of shit for free anywhere else. It's very important to understand that. And we're handing it out. People thought this was a joke. Now they're mad at the chart. So much luck, once again, because the facts don't give a fuck. Peace. What's good, fam? A happy, what is it, Monday? My life is so good I can never even tell what day of the week it is. Yes, a happy Monday to everyone that is tuning in, whether it is on replay or live. Hope everybody's having an outstanding day. We had a pretty sanguine day in terms of volatility. Markets didn't really do anything crazy today, but if you were tuned in last night towards the end, excuse me there, you caught the last few minutes of the show, and we ended up going up after all instead of going down. And we were watching, let me just share the screen right away while I wait. And today's will be a little quicker than normal because we're just going to review the day's ongoing price action. So last night, when we ended the stream, we were like right here. And price was really moving into the settlement area. And the thought process was that we were going to get a retracement day of sorts. And that's essentially what we got. And the market has officially given us what resistance is as far as the price action goes, because price didn't breach that halfway mark. And we talked about this before. Let's mark it out. The peak here is 19.72 half. Let me get the magnet. Magnet's on that. All right, let's make sure we got coordinates. And what's the bottom? All right. So if you guys look at the price action here, you'll see that today's candle did not get above the 61.8% level, which is key to the price action staying bearish. If it does start to probe this area, then sellers should step in. But it's all the way up into this zone, really, and even further into this zone. And if we look at the open, let's take a look at the open for today into tomorrow's session. We closed near the third level, really at the third level. And typically when we close at that level, the odds of a continuation are ultimately dependent on the trend. And given that we don't have a trend right now, as far as up goes, the trend is down, right? The overall trend is down in the market. And that's what's been signified. Like, that's what increasing volatility highlights. Um, and when volatility is increasing, that's what the down motion in this bottom indicator is. So if we go back to August 21st in the chart, we'll see that that's a topping area or something like that. Yeah. So here we go. The 21st, 22nd, right here, 21st and then 22nd. And an outside day causing a reversal, which has brought us to this point. Now, important to note that this area right here could definitely be support, 18,400. Let's mark it. Wait, I think I want to use the other one. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I think it's just the one I want. Yep. So 18,390 is that level. Let me just make this line a little less aggressive. And that's basically what we hit today. So let's zoom in a little bit. Market actually closed Friday right below that level, but the market opened above it. So that's interesting to note. Again, you're seeing this resistance area being marked out by the price action, but we're traded back into it. And on an hourly basis, in terms of time, price is entering a critical area. So again, you got this 18,730. Turns out that level is important for yesterday's work, 1747. We went all the way up to 730 today, it turns out. But we also have a temporary point of control right here at 46. So we have this area of volatility resistance and a temporary point of control, along with this retracement level here that's acting as resistance so far. I mean, we're seeing it on the chart every time price comes in this 720, 730 area, the market rotates lower. However, now, given that the slopes of the moving averages are sloping upward on a pretty big time frame, as you guys can see here, this is 144 ticks per bar. And in terms of points and dollar amounts for the NASDAQ, that translates to, what is it, 36 points, which is equivalent to $720 per candle. So every time one of these candle prints, $720 were either made or lost. And if you're talking about the small micro contract or the mini, is it mini? Yeah, mini. Then you just divide it by 10. But if we're talking about 10 bars of these make $7,200, right? That's significant amounts of risk. So if the chart is moving, I don't know, this looks like 40 bars or so. 32 bars. That's a pretty big move because that's 32 bars times 720, right? So that's 7,200. That's 250,000 roundabouts in terms of risk, right? If you're wrong, because that's what we care about. We care about what if we're wrong. So that's the kind of thing you got to think about when you're addressing these markets, because the market doesn't care. It's going to take your money, and that's $23,000. Excuse me, not 250, but 23,000. My zeros are always off. But anyways, so that's the excuse me, the impact of this area right here. And if you look at the volume profile on the right side, you'll see that there is a zone, a gap here. And typically that means that this area right below that gap is resistance. So we have all these different points of confluence. And what that means is we have all these different ways of looking at the market and identifying the same level. And that's essentially what you want your strategy to be. You want to find different ways to layering uh, things in terms of your analysis that just make it a no-brainer. Like if you're looking at the market three different ways and you're identifying the same thing in those three different ways, and odds are that thing you're identifying is probably important or going to happen or something like that. So, long story short, if this market is really going to turn around and it is not going to continue going lower, which I think is going to continue going lower because long term, the moving averages are down. You have a lot of reasons for resistance above because in reality, the market is not clear to reverse until you see it do its pocket move in terms of the turnaround. And what is the pocket move? Well, I'll show you because it always looks the same. It's basically something like this, right? Except for that, when you're seeing it happen, let's see if we can identify it on. Yep, here we go. This is the pocket move. So you're seeing, at least that's how I think of it. I just name it that. That's not like an official name or anything. But point is, we're trying to identify when the market is going to reverse, right? The surefire way of knowing the market is going to reverse is by being able to see the market. And this is just if you use moving averages. If you don't, then I don't know. There's other ways of doing that, but we're talking about this right now because this is really the easiest way because it's visually impossible to miss unless you're just ignoring it. So here we have the long-term moving averages 144 to 133, and you see that the market is just, this is resistance until it's not, right? And then when it doesn't become resistance, it trades within these moving averages, kind of like what you're seeing here, kind of like what you're seeing there, right? But it's a distinct type of move, and it always does it. If you use moving averages, you've seen it before, you'll see it again. And point being, we're going to see the market do it here if it is going to reverse. And here it is in a downward motion, the pocket move, because you had it flip the short-term moving averages and it had to flip the long-term moving averages. And that's the idea. It's essentially confirming that the trend is in fact in the direction that you're seeing it. But, it's not going to always look the same, right? Because there's the pocket move right there. But you flip the short-term moving averages, then the long-term, and then the same deal again, right? But it happened a little differently here. But the long-term moving averages are kind of the calling signal, right? And you're seeing that as time moves through, as price moves through time. And now we're pretty much opened up here. Yeah, right in the resistance area, and we sold off. So if the market is able to get above this 1740, 1750 area, it's really going to take off because that's just what the setup is right now. But it's not going to really take off until it's able to get above these long-term moving averages. And right now that's 790 and then 18,900. So it has about 300 points to go before it could actually do anything. And then, when you look at market structure, how markets typically do reverse, they got to test this zone at least once, right? When we were looking at that 55, yeah, is this it? Yep. Hold on. Come on. So yeah, it tested the zone two times, one, two, right? And then it went into the area and then treated it as support. Right. And let's zoom in a little bit just to make sure you guys see that. You had price trade into the moving averages a couple times to try to get over it. But typically on the first attempt, it never goes through. It's typically the second or the third one. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. On the third attempt, it went through, and then it treated this level as support. And that's essentially what we're looking for over here. if the market is going to reverse on a big picture time frame. Because now we're just out here looking to see what's going to happen. But it's going to take a lot longer, and it's just going to be a slower process because it's not a 55 tick chart versus 144, which is almost three times bigger in terms of price range. So the momentum is upward. You got price essentially changing the slope of the short-term moving averages. So that's the first sign that the market is kind of in the zone as far as reversing or attempting to reverse or something like that, right? But the idea is to understand what's happening at all levels, right? So when we zoom out a little bit further, what does this actually look like, right? And the reality is that when you zoom out even further, it kind of looks like we're running into some resistance right here on short term for short term moving averages. Funny headline I just saw. But it's like I said, if this is really just the first attempt, and here we go, we got this moving average of 744. And what's the high so far on this move? 741. So the market is trying to probe higher. Volatility has yet to eclipse its previous local high. Um, so that's going to be a big factor. It eclipsed its earlier one is set in today, but you want to see it get above this one actually. And in the same vein, these two, if it is going to reverse, because as far as momentum goes, it looks good. You got a terminal point here. You have a terminal point here, which gives you the opportunity to set. Sorry about that, guys. The opportunity to set a direction, right, for price. Here's your downward trend. And what you're trying to identify, right, is a diverging point. And we have those easily spotted, right? So we kind of have what seems like a long opportunity here presenting itself, but we have to be careful because if you look at the big picture, it's not that cut and dry, right? It's really not that cut and dry. You have upward sloping long-term moving averages that are essentially losing their upward slope in this point, kind of like what you saw here, right? So typically that introduces higher levels of volatility, which is what we've been seeing lately, right? And this is 34 ticks per candle. And we're looking at volatility right here pretty much for all of September right now. I removed all of August. So just looking at all of September, let's see here. Just going to clip out all of August. This is basically all September right here. And the last candle in August, I think, is this one. Let's see. Yep. This last candle, the last candle right here that closed at 15.12 on the VIX is the last candle for August. So the first candle for September is 15.76 and it closed 16.05. So as we talked about probably like 10 streams back, I mean, we've talked about this numerous times, but high range, the mid range for volatility is 13 to 14. So being above 14 implies that we're in a high volatility range, high volatility regime market. So that on the back of that implies bigger ranges just on normal days, even on extreme days. All of that stuff plays into how the markets are going to trade from top to bottom. And in other words, the range for the market for that day. And that's important information because if the market is trending, you want to know. the market is not trending, you want to know, because you don't want to take a position expecting the market to move 50 points and it only moves 25, right? You're going to be left holding a bag because once it reaches that 25, it's probably going to turn around, reverse, and you're going to lose whatever you made. Because that's just how markets work when you're expecting them to do something that they're not going to do. And that's the difference, right? It's not about expecting, it's about having a series of probabilities that'll help you realize exactly where you stand with respect to what you're thinking about the market. Because that's ultimately what it's about. It's not about anything else. It's just about your assessment in regards to your strategy and like how you need to view the market. And that's not obvious to some people. So like if you're like a day trader or you like to take intraday risk opportunities on, then you need to be able to measure the market, period, as far as what it might do, right? And a lot of people don't realize that. And it's not even hard, but that's what you got to do. You got to figure out how a market is going to trade to a certain extent, and you kind of see um you kind of see what a range is going to be when volatility is elevated. If volatility is elevated, you can expect a bigger range, and if volatility is not elevated, you can expect a meager range. So if the market typically trades 200 points, right? Like if you look at the Nasdaq, the average day, the average net change is going to be like 100, 150 points, right? You're looking at 59, 14, 600, 100, 186, 300, 76, 700, 180, right? So as we go through time, we're seeing that we're going to constantly get opportunities to take out 100 points at least from this market, right? And some days, yeah, it'll be less, but odds are that the market's still traveling at least 80, 50 points, right? So you know that your opportunity set is going to be somewhere between 50 and 150 points in this market just by looking at some candles. And that's not, anything crazy as far as analysis goes. That's just simple, simple analysis that you have to do if you're going to be pretending to be playing this game, right? Because a lot of people like to think that they're doing stuff, but they don't understand what they're doing exactly. And I was there. This is how I know. This is how I can speak to it, right? So that's important to understand. You need to know whether you're pissing in the wind or not. Ultimately, is what it boils down to, because you never want to do that, and that applies to both boys and girls, right? Because a fluttering stream is not a strong stream, and that's what leads to the mess. And we don't want the mess. We want the strong stream, right? Where that joint is going straight into the water. And so with the pressure such that it's not even causing no backsplash. Because that's ultimately perfection. It really is. Because you don't want to find yourself in a scenario where you're hanging off a building, right, when you don't want to be. And it sounds kind of ridiculous, but you would be surprised. Right, so let's take a look at what's happening right now. This is 55 ticks, and it's the market is weak right here, right? And this is what we ultimately want to see if the market is going to pause up here. You want to see it stop and then make those successive lower highs, kind of like you see the successive higher lows, and then it'll move up, right? But you have to let the market confirm that it is, in fact, going to roll over Because if it doesn't, then you're just going to get a skull drug. So, important things to note as you opt to try to be a speculator, because speculating is difficult, because it's almost like gambling, except it's only gambling if you don't have a strategy. So this is why we run through these charts every day, gives ourselves some type of perspective as far as what the market is doing, right? And it was on VWAP yesterday, right? This pink line right here is volume weighted average price for the year. This is my yearly indicator for VWAP. And not surprising, the price bounced there. And we talked about how this could have been support yesterday, and it's playing out somewhat that way today because we had a somewhat of a reversal day. Well, we had a reversal day, right? But the idea is understanding that the market is built to do what it's going to do. And we just have to be prepared for the scenarios as they develop, right? Because look at this big swing. This is 377 ticks per candle. That's big, right? So the equivalent is 94 points per candle. So every candle that you're looking at on this chart is 94 points. So that means $1,900 almost. It's about $15 short. So that's a lot of risk, right? So if somebody is holding a position in this direction and all of a sudden it reverses, they probably don't want to lose even a candle. But it'll happen if you're not paying attention, right? And a candle where it's worth 1,800, $1,900, that's a pretty important candle. So how can we look at this stuff and make sense of what could happen? Right. Well, we have to look out even further. That's about the only way to ever do it. And interestingly enough, when you look out even further, the picture remains relatively the same. And what's important to note actually is the moving averages are relatively flat. And to boot, you have support in the form of price action support right here. And that's pretty much where price bounced yesterday. Let's zoom in here real quick so you guys can take a look at what I'm talking about exactly. So you have this zone. Excuse me. You have this volatility zone here, today's volatility zone here, and then we'll see what tomorrow's volatility zone brings tomorrow. But on top of these two levels, you had this big area here. So you had a lot of reasons for buyers to step in, and they did. So if the moving averages being flat at this juncture, if that is significant and relevant, the market will trade at least to this height. Once again, it will trade at least to 19,600, it looks like, is the area to take out these what are they called, naked points of control. And all that means is that the market traded there and it left some supply there. It needs to go back and clear it out. That's ultimately what that means. And that's kind of what people mean when they say how auctions trade, and that's how markets trade in the auction process. They trade from point of control to point of control. And I happen to just mark 2 points of control as time passed by, and the market sold off a while back. So it wouldn't be surprising to see the market chop. But as we talked about earlier, that smaller picture, 233 candles, is important, because that's going to be the one that lets us know for real that the market is in fact going to trade back up to this area. Because otherwise, it's just going to be stuck below this supply zone right here. And interestingly enough, this area was important for 1, 2, 3 days, and then the market sold off. So it would not be surprising to see the market come and trade back up to this area, 19,500 or so, 19,000, or I'm sorry, 18,900 or so. So that's just important to note. And that's really the crux of what's really going to drive the rest of the market, right? Because when we come back here and look at what's happening with the dollar on a 5 day basis, the dollar almost looks like it wants to recover, right? And we talked about highs, quarterly and annual. Sorry, guys. Quarterly, and then you have the annual VWAP, right? So when you're looking at both of these, you know, price went as low as, and those standard deviations are set to 2.375 in terms of how much data we're capturing, and that approximately equates to 98% of the instances, the occurrences that could happen within this range. So that means that we're looking really good for the dollar to at least trade back to this VWAP area up here, and VWAP will keep trudging down. And the quarterly, I mean, it's either going to be the quarterly VWAP suppresses it, or it trades back up to the annual VWAP. But they'll both keep ticking down as time passes. But the trend is definitely going to reverse for now. And the question is, how is that going to make the rest of the market? The market looks relatively somewhat like it's going to hang on for dear life. But when you look at the dollar, I mean, if the dollar is going to have a material impact on it, then probably not, right? Even though you have all these supporting factors from a speculation perspective on a short-term basis, you got to understand that can flip on a dime, right? And now we're going to go look at crude, see what that did today, and it's same deal. It's hugging its yearly and quarterly VWAPs, and let's get rid of this old trend lines here, because now we're reaching extreme levels of volatility as far as what the market can tolerate, right? That's why you see this volatility indicator coming very close to 100. If you look at the top, this is 0, which is why we always mark the 0 line up here. And we typically don't even mark 100 line. But the 0 line is important to have marked out because it's kind of a no man's land out here. But again, the idea is, the market, if it doesn't reach 100, odds are that move is not over. So we'll see what happens here, because this move is just beginning. The market, it's bottomed out before here, and it's bottomed out before here without this volatility indicator hitting 100. So that could be related to what happened in 2020, ultimately screwing up the read for every other bottom. Because as I'm looking at it now, damn, it hasn't really read 100. Is this 2022? Oh, it did it then. It did it in 2022, but it hasn't done it since, which is pretty crazy. Let's see. 2020. Yep. So it looks like 2020 and 2022 did a good job as far as volatility output goes for crude. So we're gonna be keeping an eye on what this market could be doing right here, because it could be that is the bottom right there for crude on a short-term basis anyway. And we'll keep watching that. Let's take a look at cotton real quick, because I have a specific proclivity to that. And yeah, it's in that zone, but it's not looking strong. First quarter was very weak. second quarter looks like it because it could just roll over. Um, volume does not look supportive at all. Momentum does not look supportive at all. We already have it rolling over here after a long period of what seemed to be like it was going to roll over, or turn up, and it never did. And then you had volatility fall short of reaching the magical zero level, um, which is always a sign of weakness when the market is attempting to reclaim strength. And the same deal when it's going down. You want to see it hit 100. Or you want to see a thrust in volatility, right? Because the idea is that the move's going to be strong. Or on the upside, it looks like we're going to continue going lower with cotton. And again, why do I look at cotton? Well, cotton is in a lot of stuff. They like to act like cotton is like silk, and they don't like let us use cotton a lot, but cotton is a very important product. You pay a lot for that. So crude oil was on his bottom legs. Let's take a look at heating oil. Probably looks similar. Yup, almost. So you see it bounced off there, all to back to VWAP, and we might see the same deal here, but we'll see how high it goes. It might not breach 2.5, 2.4. This is looking pretty weak. Heating oil, natural gas, just consolidating, doing what natural gas does, a whole lot of nothing until, with natural gas, again, you got to really know the fundamental picture, understand what people are buying and selling and stuff like that. Gasoline below $2 and seems to be same setup as crude, so we'll just keep an eye on that. Silver, we already looked at gold, looking supportive up here. Let's take a look at gold again. I don't think we even talked about it, but looking supportive again, which is interesting because so is the dollar. Let's look at palladium and platinum. Palladium looking relatively supportive. Platinum, same deal. Let's look at copper. It probably looks similar. Yep, looks similar. Cool. So let's take a look at rates. Bonds, what are they doing? Long term. The 30-year bond, what is it doing? Yep, so trading up. Important to note the divergent volume. Looks like divergent price momentum. No, yep. You gotta go by the closes. So let's see what volatility is doing. Volatility looks like it's getting close to zero. So we are entering the danger zone for bonds. If they keep going and momentum keeps subsiding, that'll be a surefire signal that rollover is imminent. And we've already hit, it looks like we've hit zero before. Yep. May 16, and this is not zero here, nor here, but it is here. Yeah, close to it. All right, let's see. All right. Well, we'll see, because again, what you want to see is it to hit zero, and then if it doesn't hit zero again on the up move, then it's gonna ultimately roll over. But it has to be lining up with momentum and volatility, of course, and not just volume and not just volatility alone. Let's take a look at the 2-year just to see what that's looking like, and it's even higher. Let's take a look at the actual contract just to have a pure view, and yep, definitely higher. Let's take a composite look just for momentum's sake because it looks like momentum. All right, so we'll just keep an eye on this. We already looked at the VIX. Let's look at it from a time perspective. And again, the idea is to understand that when prices are above this 13, 14 zone, let me mark this short. 1333. Come on. All right. When volatility is above this point, you got to worry about what's coming as far as price action because it's going to be whippy. And interestingly enough, if you go to the NASDAQ and look at July 17th, what do we see? Let's take a look. Look at that. First day, big dumpathon begins. And, this is just basic market stuff. Um, Unfortunately, it doesn't really tie into crypto because it can't, right? The thing to understand about crypto and what's going on over there is that it's really just all smoke and mirrors because the crowd over there is too ignorant as to what market structure is, how markets trade, what's even a real market. The average person in crypto has no clue because they are just dealing with crypto. They don't actually know anything about markets. Their first foray into markets is unfortunately crypto. And that's not a positive thing because there's a lot of scams that happen in crypto that you don't visibly, you just can't tell that they're scams if you don't know. And this is why I advise you guys not to touch the things that are popular and that are mainstream in crypto because they're actually not popular or mainstream anywhere else. In fact, if you want to compare it to anything, you can compare fake crypto to essentially trading on those exchanges when AMC and GME are going up, GameStop and the movie theater stocks, and the broker's shutting it down on you because you're winning. It's just literally the same exact thing. It's no different. So people pretending that they have some type of knowledge or inside scoop or whatever, you're just playing yourself and you're just wasting your time and you're wasting precious dollars and cents on good trades that you're ignoring because you're just playing yourself, unfortunately. And that's just the name of the game. That's life. It's not until we learn to be adults for real. And what I mean is think for yourself, because even adults, by definition, and what I mean is age, don't know how to do that. They don't know how to think for themselves. People might say that they do, but they don't. And it's obvious when everybody has literally the same damn way of viewing everything. So, you can tell yourself you don't, but those of us that know, we know. So you can just lie to yourself, and that's okay. But you can't lie to those that know. And the point of those that know is that, we like to share the information to help others. It's not a competition because at the end of the day, a frustrated companion is not a successful companion. And, a rising tide really does lift all boats. I wish people believed that, there would be less hate and less vitriol and just general bullshit in society. But unfortunately, that's not how it works, guys. So, you know, we'll take a look at the news and we'll wrap it up. Because again, it's just consolidation time right now. We're just waiting for the market to do its thing before the next leg lower or higher. And it's just really about understanding what the market is doing. And it's kind of like what I showed you guys yesterday, right? We looked at all these different things and how they could impact the market and impose their pressure on price and whatnot. And here we are, right? We've identified support. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the Nasdaq or the E-mini S&P. It's ultimately the same thing, right? Look, we haven't reached that same area of support for the E-mini. However, there it goes, 53.26. However, that could mean one of two things. And the first one is that the market's so bullish that it couldn't let the E-mini get down there. And only the Nasdaq was able to reach its support because it's a bigger market in terms of valuation, in terms of dollars, and because of that, it trades in a wider range. I hope that makes sense. The moves are going to happen proportionately, right? So if you look at the value of the S&P 500, it's only 5,486 versus the Nasdaq, which is 3 to 4 times bigger. Capiche? So if you look at the range for the day, in the S&P 500, it was essentially 90 points. If you look at the range of the Nasdaq, if you multiply that 90 by 4 or 3, you're going to get 270 to 360 points. And what was the range for the day? 734 minus 380. So let's go with 734 minus 334. That's 400 points minus 50, 350 points. Right under 360. And you guys know I'm not no genius. I'm just a regular dude. So it's not hard. Just don't step on your toes. And that's the hardest thing to do as a human being is getting out of your own way. All right. Now let's take a look at the news and wrap it up for the day. Oh, wait. I don't have it on the right tab. All righty. Let's spritz it up. Get a little update. So this is pretty important. And I think we've actually gone over this. If not, I'm sorry, but we should have. Because here we go. This is from within my realm of expertise. This is documentation straight out of the military, and by the military specifically, the New York National Guard, apparently. These are the folks that have been tasked in New York to deal with the bullshit. Unfortunately for them, those guys get some shitty assignments. I remember seeing them in, when was it? They were definitely out there pretty much every time I've been out there. And they're just a National Guard unit. So, in case you guys don't understand, that shouldn't be the case. So, them guys get fucked a lot. That's kind of my point. So, let's read. Investigative reporter James O'Keefe published unclassified information from the U.S. Army North Division on X, revealing that the Venezuelan prison gang wreaking havoc across the northern Denver suburb of Aurora has become a nationwide crisis. We're talking about just one gang. Now, if all of this is in fact true, you have to ask yourself, how does one prison gang in a country that's tens of thousands of miles away? Venezuela is tens of thousands of miles away from the US. Where did they get all the information to just, one, come up here, two, come up here in an organized fashion such that they were essentially deployed to wherever they needed to go? They're not in my area. I don't see no fucking Venezuelans around here. None. Guess where they're at? Where all the suckers are. Places like Brooklyn, Manhattan, uh, basically where all the commies are. Now that I think about it out loud. Probably in Harlem too. Where all the commies are is where they got all these people at. That's why I haven't seen any. Because after I've been asking and wondering, and I keep seeing reports of supposedly these people being in New York, I'm like, I don't see these motherfuckers nowhere. And I run all over New York, all over this motherfucker, and I never see them. Now I know why, because I'm not in the areas, the uppity areas, basically, to put it plainly. I don't live in the uppity area, and I don't really go to those uppity areas unless I gotta go to like Manhattan or some shit like that. So that's where you see them all the time. Never fails because they're the only people that stand out. They're the only people that aren't dressed properly for the area. So it's not hard to see them because we're talking about places where business, $1 million shit is happening. And these motherfuckers is wearing, shit from a flea market at best. All right. Law abiding Americans will soon feel the growing consequences of the Biden Harris administration's failed open southern border policies. And of course, they put in parentheses, recall what's happened in Springfield, Ohio, which we talked about yesterday. Importing the third world into the first world. Now, I want to just impress something upon you guys while I talk about this because, again, I'm Hispanic. My family fucking immigrated here. First one I think came in 1960 or some shit like that. My grandmother's brother. So, there's a reason he came here and never left. There's a reason people came here and never left back then. And the reality is that I'm sorry guys, let me close this freaking window. And the reality is that the America that people migrated to back in the day is not the same country anymore. And it's because of the lack of moral aptitude that's been pushed through media and entertainment. Anytime you see the news, it's some negative shit. They might give something positive 30 seconds out of an hour. 30 seconds out of a whole hour. We're talking about a period of time that has 36,000 of those seconds. They give 30 of them. 30. 3,600 seconds and only 30 are given to positive anything. I mean, that's not even a tenth of a percent in terms of how much time is given out of an hour. How can society not be what it is today when you look at things from that perspective? Right? And this is why they're so hell bent on suppressing any real information from getting out there. Let's keep reading. O'Keefe Media Group has obtained unclassified information from the U.S. Army of the North Division, highlighting the growing presence of one of Venezuela's largest criminal organizations in the U.S. The document states that the NWO has established a presence in Brooklyn, Bronx, Williamsburg, and Williamsburg, New York. Williamsburg is Brooklyn, with approximately 400 members living in these cities. The CUI also warns and controlled unclassified information. Um, the document also warns that TDA members in Denver have been given a green light to fire on or attack law enforcement, with Homeland Security investigations in New York receiving a similar report. The document details how the criminal organization is using advanced technology and surveillance, heightening the danger. I hope your people are listening to this. To U.S. military personnel and law enforcement. So you're telling me these motherfuckers walked all the way from Venezuela with high tech equipment that's better than the shit the pigs got in the military? That's what you're telling me. I mean, you got to understand when you're being set up. Let's keep reading. This is just funny. Um, it states coordinated efforts between local, state, federal law enforcement and the military are crucial to protect against these expanding threats. So let me explain to you guys what's about to happen under the guise of this problem that was created by the same people that are going to provide you with the solution that will become a breach of all of your rights. Things are more than likely going to get bad enough to a point where they're going to determine their ability to call martial law or some bullshit like that. Because why else would you let in the equivalent of ISIS into the U.S.? That's what's happening here. In case you guys are not aware, there's going to come a point in time where these entities are just going to start doing shit like we're in Israel. Because you have to understand that a docile society is easily overcome and overran. I mean, people think sports matter. And what's funny is this year I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about football so far. And usually they don't wait till the season starts to talk about it. Even in preseason they're talking about it, but they're not really talking about it this year. I happened to see the one comment on dude getting arrested, but what's new there? I mean, I don't know what the hell you want my thoughts on that shit for. It's just some guy that got arrested, whatever. Wasn't he like right outside the stadium or some shit? I don't know. Whatever. Point is, not really an important person. What's important is the fact that it happens continuously for no reason. And that is what the focus should be on. Why is it that law enforcement spends so much time pulling people over that are just trying to get from A to B instead of actually being on the lookout for actual motherfucking crime? So that's my thoughts on the feds arresting Tyreek Hill, since somebody asked. So, with National Guardsmen recently seen in the subway stations across New York City, I mean, you got to understand this has been the case since 9/11. So, this is not recent. Um, sorry, guys. So, yeah, it's not recent. But understand that ultimately, the idea is that these law enforcement officials are able to just be everywhere and anywhere at their beck and call. So you should understand what's happening right now, right? While things look a certain way, don't let your eyes lie to you. Don't let your mind lie to you. I don't see anything over here. I only see it in certain areas. So I shouldn't see no pigs around here unless it's related to, typical Bronx ongoings, right? Nothing should be changed, basically, is my point. And that's the idea. If things start changing, start speaking up. Because if you don't see a viable threat in your direct vicinity, and there's no reason for things to change from a security standpoint. So if you live in New York City, you know how they do the floodlights and they put the mobile police vans and they'll put just cars and vehicles just to establish some type of presence so that people think there's cops nearby, thereby quelling any potential negative actions or whatever. That's the thought process behind that. Doesn't really work out that way, but yeah, we'll see. Let's see here. Has the electricity reality check arrived? Now, I've been talking about this for a long time in the sense that I was thinking they're going to start doing people in the US, and this already happened in California. I don't know if it's happening in Washington. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, but I don't see no reports of it, so I'm not really sure. But point is, you see these people scrambling to create more power sources for these AI data centers, because that's what it's for. It's for AI. That's why I'm just calling it AI data center, because it's not really for regular internet shit. Because why haven't they done it? The internet is 50, 60 years old. Why you wait until now? 'Cause why haven't they done it? The internet is 50, 60 years old. Why you wait until now? 'Cause 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 w because now is when the green light exists for full throttle WEF takeover to commence. And you guys got to understand the next 10 years are going to be critical. The next 10 years are going to be critical. So, if you want a realistic timeline of when shit might hit the fan, it's 10 years from now. And what I mean is like Mad Max type shit. Because you can't put people in a cage that don't belong in a cage and think you're going to be able to. And I don't think people realize that that's literally what's happening in real time. That's why at meetings of energy regulators, policymakers, consumer advocates, and industry this summer, the content and tone of the conversations around electric system reliability have changed dramatically. Executives from across the industry all agree that dispatchable generation is needed now and will be needed for many years to come. Now, I don't know if you guys understand what dispatchable generation means, but when I was in the military, that was basically my job. Being able to essentially stand up a city at any point, at any time. And of course, that would require electricity. So that's what dispatchable generation is. It's just mobile power generators. You see buildings that have these power plants and stuff that are tucked in either the basements or the rooftop, depending on how dumb the developer is, right? Most prominently, the realization and willingness to say publicly that dispatchable resources like natural gas fire generation will be needed as the energy expansion continues and load growth accelerates for the first time in decades is a welcome admission. So, what's important for you, the viewer, to grasp is that these people knew this was coming for at least 20 years. They sat on their ass and did nothing. And now, what's the reality is going to become is that they're going to eventually divert power to certain points on the grid. And people will not be a priority. And as long as people continue to be docile and subjecting themselves to manipulation and just shit treatment, well, it's going to be the case. I mean, look at Texas. Houston, I think it was, when they had that cold snap or whatever. And the reality is that wasn't even new. That's just how the shit is over there. But if you don't know, you don't know. For several years, the discussion around the future of the electrical grid was about how expensive it will be and how, quote, out of political favor, end quote, resources would be moved off grid in favor of politically favored ones without creating any disruptions or reliability challenges. And just like that, the story has changed dramatically. Why? And we've been talking about why for the past several streams. And ultimately, it's just very relevant for you guys to understand because you should start getting your little inside the home generators, little power plants, just clean stuff that'll allow you to have power sources in your crib because we don't know when this is going to start. What we do know is that once the AI infrastructure is set up, you can be rest assured that is when it will start. And that infrastructure isn't really set up yet. They're trying to retool everything now, and you already see the face scanners and shit at the airport. They're trying to do it in the stadiums for the people that go watch video, or for the people that go watch games, sports events and stuff. So it's really going to be all dependent on how subservient the population is. And if 2020 was a good example, a good dry run, we're fucked. So prepare yourself for what's coming and do what you got to do. Don't wait for the last second. In the last hurrah, credit card debt unexpectedly soars despite record high APIs as savings rate hits record low. And it's a story as old as time, unfortunately. And the sad fact is that this is the end of the ride this time around. So, uh, what Wow. Check this out. Foreign streamer OnlyFans spews 630 million in dividends on owner Radvinsky. Now you guys got to understand that this stuff is put in documentation. It's not like the guy's stealing the money, but good for him. Blah blah blah. Does anyone else smell market crashing here? Yeah, of course. We've been kind of watching it happen step by step here. The Biden Harris world is afire. Somehow, the United States ended up in this summer with no engaged president and an absent vice president who avoids the missing president and is practically repudiating everything she co owned the last 3 years. Pretty good synopsis. CIA MI6 chiefs praise Ukraine's Kursk invasion for bringing war to ordinary Russians. Wow. Holy fuck. I mean, if this doesn't explain to you where we're at in life, I don't know. I don't know where we think we're going because we're not going anywhere fast. Literally not. Give a fuck what your expectations for the future are. As long as people like this are able to walk freely and do what they feel like doing, the world will not know peace. Pretty simple. And it sounds crazy. And I'm going to just talk about this one last thing and I'm going to wrap it up. But, think about this because I've been thinking about it for like a month straight. We live in a world where at any moment you could die and it won't matter based on who killed you. That's the world we live in nowadays. And you could say it's always been like that, but it's very out in the open now. Unlike before, where it was just, only certain people. But now it's very obvious. So, what do you think that tells you? There is no rule of law whatsoever. The rule only applies to you if you're dumb enough to follow it. But you shouldn't if you want to stay alive. I mean, this is the times we're living in right now. And the same people that created this scenario have been in power for all but for the past fucking 80 years, pretty much, if not 110, 111, literally. The one motherfucker that was in charge there that might have not been, and to me, that's also not 100% the case. I think he was also part of the crew, but they just killed him because he was trying to do some other shit. That's what I think. Because they don't like people that go against them. And they solve that shit violently. And the problem is that people think that it's just gonna stop. Like by itself. And I'm afraid to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not. It's not just gonna stop. They're not gonna just stop stealing kids. They're not gonna just stop killing kids. They're not just gonna stop raping kids. They're not just gonna stop doing all this evil shit that they do and have been doing since before we were all born. And it doesn't matter how old you are if you're watching this. These people have always been doing the same shit. But again, now it's at a point where it's out in the open and it's visible to whoever wants to see it. So it's literally on us how the future plays out as a group of human beings. I don't know what that means exactly, but Draghi says Europe in existential danger without massive new spending and joint debt. Germany merely says 9. I mean, let's do more of the same. And Germany, they're just going to go against whatever just because they can. Kamala Harris is secluded in a hotel with a Trump impersonator. This is reality today. Israeli strike on alleged Syrian chemical weapons facility leaves high death toll. I mean, wow. You have two countries being backed by a bunch of war criminals that are running around just randomly killing people. And the people that are being ruled by these same criminals, war criminals, whatever you want to fucking call them, mass murderers, whatever, these same people think that they can just sit there and wait for them to stop. That's funny. Have a good night, guys.